Hello coders, today we're going to be talking about how to get into the web development industry, and today I'm joined by Tom Vorel from the Czech Republic, who's just come into this industry. Hello Tom, how's it going?
Hi Peter, I'm doing pretty good.
You've had a good week?
Yeah, I've had an excellent week. My first week in my new job, so
yeah, that's
pretty exciting stuff.
Well, congratulations for that. That's a tremendous step in web development. So we're going to pick apart how you got into the industry, and you're a self-taught developer yourself. So we're going to be talking about those kind of aspects too. So first of all, Tom, how did you become a web developer, and what brought you into this industry?
Well, basically, I was 22 years old. I was at this dead-end job that there was really no future in it, and I was trying to figure out what to do with my life. And I was browsing YouTube, and I saw this video. I remember the name of the YouTuber. Her name was Kalina Edwards.
Right.
I don't know if you're familiar with Kalina Edwards.
I'm not, but I will look her up. Shout out to Kalina.
Well, she had an interesting story as well. But basically, she's this lovely African American girl from the States, and she had this video, and it was called, I believe, "My First Week as a Web Developer." And she was vlogging basically and talking about her new job and how interesting it is, and you know how she loves it. So immediately I was like, well, I've done a bit of programming back in high school. I don't have a college degree, by the way, in anything. High school diploma, that's all I have. So I did my research, and I actually found out that you don't need a degree to become a developer. So I was like, okay, I might give this a try. So I gave it a try. Tried learning HTML and CSS on Codecademy.
Right.
And after like a week, all of this is happening, by the way, whilst having a full-time job.
Right.
After like a week, I think I got into like classes, something like that, CSS classes, and making layouts with floats.
Right.
And I don't think I did Flexbox. Yeah, with floats. And basically I told myself, like, this is way too difficult for me. This is way too difficult. And I gave up. I gave up.
Right.
And after 2 weeks or some time, I believe it was like a week or two, I went back to it, and I watched the video again, the Kalina Edwards video, and I watched more of her videos where she was talking about how she was switching careers and she was learning on Team Treehouse.
Right.
And I was like, okay. This girl she had a similar story. Like she clearly didn't have any technical or tech background, rather. So I was like, this is totally doable. And it's just me being lazy. It's just me being lazy and not wanting to put in the work.
Right.
So I made a promise to myself that evening. It was an evening, I remember that. And I was like, I'm going to learn this stuff. And it might take a year. It might take 2 years, it might take 3 years, but I'm going to learn this, and I'm going to make it a career, because what do I have to lose? I'll stay in this end job, and
so what were you doing in that job to begin with? What was that thing?
It was a very interesting job for the first 2 weeks, and it was called. The job title sounds interesting, but it really is not. It's called Fraud Prevention and Compliance Analyst.
Okay.
Basically, I was working for this company. We were getting e-commerce orders, and there was some, let's say, system in place that would. I'll skip the details. Basically, I was checking orders that would come in manually and screen if the companies that were ordering stuff from us were legitimate companies and not fraudulent entities.
Okay, so completely nothing to do with.
Absolutely nothing to do with code, nothing to do with programming, nothing to do with web development, completely unrelated.
How long did you give yourself to teach yourself code, and sort of what were the foundations that you seeked out to do? You said that CSS you had a look at before, but you found that a bit difficult. Did you revisit that?
Oh yeah. Well, first of all, I didn't. I told myself I'm going to give myself 2 years.
2 years, okay.
Because I saw all these videos like, oh, become a web developer in
like
3 weeks.
3 months or 3.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Learn this language in 10 minutes. And I was like, I'm not going to put all that pressure on myself. So I'm going to take my time and I'm going to learn this stuff. So I started from scratch. I started again HTML.
Right.
Then I went to CSS, and then I went to vanilla JavaScript, and then I went into frameworks, which is something that I shouldn't have done that early.
Okay.
After like 2 or 3 months, that was my first mistake.
Right.
Going to Angular, React. I don't think Vue was. Yeah, Vue was just getting a bit of traction, starting to get a bit of traction.
Yeah.
So I tried that as well.
Yeah. So it sounds like it was like a kid in a candy shop. You kind of looked at all of these frameworks and picked and chose them all. I mean, you tackled the 3 main pillars of front end development there. You've got the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, vanilla JavaScript down. So we'll talk about some hindsight sort of mistakes and sort of things that you would talk about to your previous self later on, but I think we'll touch on those points because it's very important. As a self-taught developer, what challenges did you face when coming into this industry, and how did you overcome them?
Well, one of the challenges definitely is that there's no blueprint for self-taught developers. Right. I mean, you get these roadmaps that you get on Medium, like this is the web development word map. Yeah, this is the what's the word?
It's like a development journey. Roadmap. Yeah,
that's the thing. That's the word. This is a roadmap for web development in 2018. This is the one for 2016. But the problem with those is they change very frequently.
Yeah.
So I just focused on the basics. I think that's always a good idea to focus on the basics.
Yeah.
And move on from there. Another challenge is imposter syndrome is real. Like if you get involved with this community and you go on Twitter, which is something that I did, and you start following on all these super smart people like Dan Abramov or Sarah Drasner or Ken C. Dodds, you get overwhelmed with information, and you always feel that you're never going to catch up.
Yes.
And that can be an issue for new programmers as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I find that at times I get what I call information guilt. So it's kind of things that I would like to know, but I just don't have time to know them. Someone's mentioned something, and so I'll look it up and I'll read sort of like the first couple of paragraphs and go, oh, that's interesting. I really should delve into that more. But then, life happens and you have to deal with the everyday. So you end up with like tons of tabs open on your browser of all these things that you really would like to know. I do appreciate that. It's something that as a developer who's been in the industry for years, I can certainly say that imposter syndrome is something that affects us all. And it's certainly not just people who do self-taught stuff, because it's also for people who come from a university or a degree background as well, because you'll only learn what you get taught at that particular snapshot in your life. And as you said, that things change so much and so fast, and they change quite rapidly, especially in the front end area, because you mentioned that you were doing... So you mentioned that you went from different frameworks. At what point did you decide that you didn't want to delve into Angular anymore, and you chose sort of Vue or another React? At what point in that sort of discovery journey did you choose another one? Was it because something was more enticing to you in terms of that framework over the other framework? How did you deal with that?
Yeah, well, I believe that, first of all, I chose React in the end because that's the most used one. If you want to get a job here in the Czech Republic, at least, you need to know React, because most of the companies here, they require you to know React. But I actually didn't like React at first, which is something that everybody says. I didn't like JSX because when I started with web development, all these extremely basic courses that teach the simplest stuff. Basically, they always say you have your HTML, you have your CSS, and you have your JavaScript.
Yeah, yeah.
When you get into React, all of that goes out of the window, and you have everything in one file. And that was really tough for me. And another thing was what can be a bit tricky for new developers. Frameworks like Vue and Angular, because they have directives, they make you more productive right away, because you don't need to know how you need to map over your array in order to render a list. You can just do ng4, you know, so you get these, what's it called? Instant gratification moments that you're feeling really productive.
Yes. However, a point that I want to make though is that you learn it through the eyes of the framework rather than from the raw vanilla JavaScript.
Absolutely.
I mean, you've come from a background where you taught vanilla JavaScript straight off the bat, but there'll be others who will go, right, I want to be a JavaScript developer today, and I'm going to start straight away on React or Angular, and have these framework sort of idioms, these sort of opinionated sort of ways of doing things, and then not truly understand the stuff that's happening behind the scenes. I think that's it's something I get asked all the time. It's like, I want to be a JavaScript developer. What framework do I need to learn?
I agree with you 100%, because that was one of the mistakes I did. I jumped into frameworks way earlier than I should have. You know, I spent like a month on JavaScript, and then immediately I went into Angular, I believe it was.
Yeah, that's quite
one of the frameworks.
What kind of time span would you, if you were speaking to your former self and you were giving advice to your former self? We'll touch on some of these points in a minute, but what would you say is a comfortable timeline to learn JavaScript? I know that's kind of a loaded question because it depends on the developer and so forth.
Exactly. That would be my answer. Like that varies from person to person. Some people need longer, some people need less. You know, there are people who you show them a line of code and they just get it.
Yeah.
They just, that's what it does. Okay, I remember that. I'm not one of those people, by the way. If I see like a code block, I need to see it in action like 4 times. And on the 5th time, I'm like, okay, I'm comfortable using this. I know what this does.
Yeah.
So I would say definitely a few months at least.
Yeah.
A few months, like 2 or 3 months maybe. But again, it varies. So, you know, I don't have a clear answer to that, I think.
No worries. So we've taken it to the point where you're in your first job and you're teaching yourself to write code. Did you have any kind of area of web development that you wanted to get into? Because, you know, e-commerce, it could be marketing, it could be all sorts of charity work. You know, was there a sort of a specialism that you wanted to dive into?
Not really when it comes to like choosing an industry.
Yes.
That's what you're asking.
Yes. Yeah.
But in general, I've always wanted to work in the entertainment industry.
Right.
So, you know, so right now I know more or less which companies I would like to work for. I didn't even think about that back then because I was like, that is completely, I don't need to think about that right now.
No.
I need to think about like learning how to make a website before, you know, I can choose an industry I'd like to go. Now that I know a little bit, I kind of can, you know, think about the companies or industries where I would like to work in. But yeah, entertainment industry was something that was very intriguing to me.
Right.
Ever since I was a little kid. So
yeah, and you're currently working in the entertainment area at the moment as a React developer.
Yeah.
So how?
Incidents.
Yeah. So how does that feel? now you've done that, you've got yourself that position, you've landed your job, and congratulations for doing so. How, that must be such a sort of a huge pat on the back to get to that point.
Yeah, it feels surreal. It really does. Like the other day, like 2 days ago, I was sitting at my desk and I just started laughing. Like, this is what you wanted. This is what you wanted, and now it's here.
Because
like,
you haven't been in there for long, have you?
No, this is my first week on this new job.
Yeah.
And it's been amazing, absolutely amazing. And I'm just very fortunate. I'm very fortunate. But at the same time, I know I worked hard for this. I really did. And when I had my first job, I would wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning to just code for an hour or two, go to my 9 to 5 job, come back, study for another 2 hours, and then I would go to bed. And I would do that, every day.
That's so inspirational. That's really, really good. Yeah.
Didn't have any social life, no girlfriend, no anything. I just went 100% in.
Yeah.
And
So that leads me on to the next question: is what motivates you to develop those skills? Because you had the motivation of getting the job. Now you've got the job. What motivates you to improve?
Yeah. Well, for me personally, and again, this varies from person to person, but for me personally, I am really good at motivating myself. Like, I don't need any external motivation. I just didn't want to be a loser. Like, I didn't want to grow up and be that guy who's not really done anything with their life,
Right.
So that was always like that was my fear. So basically I just worked because I didn't want to be, I wanted to be successful. I wanted to have something like, that's my thing. That's what I do when I'm successful in it. But for some people it might be family, it might be their family situation. They want to support their family, and they're willing to do that for them. But that's for me, it was just me not wanting to. I didn't want to disappoint my family and myself, and that's it, I guess.
So, I mean, that's quite an inspirational sort of take on pushing yourself to get to the point where you're at now. Have you had a chance? I mean, I appreciate you've only been in here for a few weeks, but have you had a chance to sort of think about where you could go in say a year, 2 years time, in terms of not only, I mean, I'm not just asking in terms of the company that you're in, but in terms of the skill level that you're at, because a development journey isn't always a straight line.
Yeah. Well, I definitely want to get better at the things that I'm working with right now, namely React and Redux.
Right.
And also, a little bit on Node.js, but I want to stick with the React ecosystem.
Right.
Because that's what I work with right now. And to tell you the truth, like, I've been working with React, or not working with React, but I've been learning React for at least a year now. Okay. And I still feel that I don't know anything. So my plan is to keep working on that, learn how to work with React and Redux.
Right.
And maybe then to go to Node.js. But JavaScript ecosystem is something that, is so huge, especially right now.
Yeah.
That you cannot run out of things to learn.
No.
So
no, and nor can you run out of industries that use it, because
exactly,
it's
everywhere.
It's everywhere. You can now fly drones with it. It's crazy. It's nuts.
Yeah.
So what resources do you use to keep yourself in the, keep yourself motivated and also keep yourself learning? What is there any kind of blogs or any sort of video? Do you still self-teach, or have you got a course?
Absolutely, absolutely, every day. You have to, especially if you're self-taught. If you're self-taught, you have to keep learning. You have to keep learning. And there's one point I really want to make. This process, it never ends. Like, you get your first job, but you still need to learn more stuff that, this never ends, because this ecosystem, or not ecosystem, this industry keeps evolving. And if you're not learning and you're not always trying to improve your skill set, you're going to be, you're going to get left behind. Yeah. And that's something that I don't want personally. So I've been learning, ever since I started, and I'm not planning to stop anytime soon, But in terms of resources, I started with the very basics on Codecademy, which is free. Mm-hmm. I learned HTML and CSS there. Mm-hmm. Then I transitioned to Team Treehouse, I believe it was, which is not free. It's like $25 per month, but I think you get like 1 month free in the beginning, which I liked it, but it was more. I felt like a child. They're explaining it in a way, they're making it really playful and colorful, and I felt like a child. So I tried everything, but mostly where I spent most of my time was Udemy courses, because I think that is the best value for your money. If you catch like they have those super sales where they have like $10 courses. But I will always check the reviews. If it gets good reviews, I would buy the course. And then obviously YouTube. There are so many great channels on YouTube, and they're totally free. One of the channels that I follow is Traversy Media. Yes. Brad Traversy is a great teacher. Learned a lot. Scott Tolinsky with Level Up Tuts. There's this German fellow. His name is Max Schwarzmüller. Maximilian Schwarzmüller. I think he has a channel. I don't know how to pronounce it. Akademind or something like that. On YouTube, he also does a lot of Udemy courses. Great teacher. So YouTube, and YouTube is free. There's absolutely no excuse. Like, you have all these free resources, on YouTube. So
it sounds like you've utilized as much as you possibly can to absorb as much knowledge as you can in what would seem, in the grand scheme of things, as a reasonably short period of time. And hats off to you to do it. Can you talk about how you transitioned from being a developer who's taught themselves to actually moving into, or going into having an interview? I mean, what was that all like? What was the feeling you had on actually going into the first interview for the thing that you actually wanted to do? I mean, that must have been quite a tense moment.
Yeah, nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
That's how I would describe it. Yeah, I was really nervous, but then I told myself, like, what is the worst thing that could happen? I'm not going to get the job. There'll be another job. And if I don't get that one, there'll be another job. I'll work on my skill set, and eventually I'll get there. So I try not to put that much pressure on myself, and I'd suggest that, I definitely recommend that to all the aspiring developers. Don't put pressure on yourself. Don't think that if this is your first job interview, the chances are you might not get that job. So if you don't, there will be another one. So don't sweat it. I went in there, and after this pep talk with myself, I went in there completely calm, and I was completely transparent, which is something that I read on Twitter and on YouTube, in YouTube videos, like how to prepare for coding interview or tech interview. Be transparent, be yourself. Tell them, like, I never studied for this, but I'm very passionate about this. This is what I want to do. And if you're willing to invest your time in me and my development, I promise you that I'll give 110% effort in whatever you want me to do. So yeah, just being transparent.
Be yourself and show
exactly,
and don't come across as someone who knows everything.
Well, definitely not. Yeah. Whenever I had an interview, I was like, I don't know a lot of things, but I'm willing to learn. That's how I start usually.
And how are you?
Because that's the truth.
Yeah, you definitely. And how are you finding learning on the job? I mean, is that because you said before that you were learning in the hours in the evening and the morning? So how are you still doing that now, or are you finding that on the job you can have sufficient amount of knowledge that you're absorbing?
Definitely not sufficient. Definitely not sufficient. But I learn differently now. I would do code alongs before that. When I was like really trying to learn that stuff, I would code along or build my own projects. And now I mostly watch courses on front-end masters, which is more like college lectures format.
Okay.
So, I watch those in the evening. But yeah, learning on the job, that's a whole other world.
Yes.
When I started, because at home, that's another thing with self-taught developers, that you don't have anybody like at school. When you're at school, you have a teacher, right?
Yeah.
You get an assignment and you get a deadline.
Yeah.
And you need to meet that deadline with a project, or you'll fail, right? If you're self-taught, then you're just learning this. You don't have anybody to answer to but yourself.
Yes, you're not accountable to anyone.
You're the student and the teacher.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So,
yes.
so that can be tricky, because whenever I would encounter a problem in my project, and I didn't know how to do something, sometimes I would be like, well, this is too difficult. I'm just going to, go to this thing and I'm going to do something else.
Yes.
And never actually finished that project or solving that issue.
Yes.
At work, you're presented with the problem. And this happened to me like 2 days ago. I had this task to build something, this tab component. Right. And I had no idea how to do that, but I had to do it because that's what they told me to do. And you just have to do it. So you just go on Google, you go on Stack Overflow, you join a few Slack channels or Discord channels, so you ask people, and eventually you figure it out.
Right. Yeah. That's a very good point about the difference between self-teaching and then being on the job, because often when you're on the job, you'll get landed tasks that you wouldn't necessarily even consider learning when you're in self-taught, because like things happen in real time when you're on the job, and if things break, I mean, what's your exposure to things like bugs versus new features? Do you fix a lot of bugs? Are you on a lot of maintenance, or are you building new stuff?
Mostly what I've done so far in the short amount of time that I've been there, it was mostly building new stuff and adding, not even features, but like building components, pieces of UI. That's not really building like fully fledged features with like filters and, tinkering with the database. I haven't been doing that, but that's mostly adding stuff to already existing websites.
That's quite interesting, because from my personal entry into the industry, it was mostly maintenance that I worked on right at the start, because they were too scared to put the juniors on the production. So we were fixing the backlog rather than coming up with the new projects, because I guess it sort of made them aware of what we were good at, in our probation, and it gave us some sort of security exposure but in a very secure, sort of safe playground environment where we would just fix a bug, and if we couldn't fix the bug, then the bug still existed. So that was no big deal, rather than actually building something new. So that's quite an interesting thing that they've allowed you to sort of go on to the new toys. So
obviously I cannot push those new features into production by myself. It has to go through code review, and then they, my manager, he tells me like what's wrong, if something's wrong, which there usually is something wrong. And we go through the code, we make the adjustments, and then we push it to to production. But I obviously I cannot push, anything into production without notifying my manager.
But that's another interesting point that you made there, that you have the ability to have someone else review your own code, and you don't get that when you're self-taught. You don't have that extra person to look over your shoulder and go, yeah, you should be doing it like this rather than that. And again, you're doing it in a very real world situation where bugs happen all the time. I mean, I remember just the sheer fear of working on a system that is being used constantly, and knowing that any change to the code would affect someone's behavior on the website. That was very weird, because before this, I was very used to just building a single web page and then pressing refresh, and I would be the only one actually seeing that.
Yeah. I was super paranoid on my first day. I was like, when I cloned the huge repo, I was like, I was scared to touch anything. And then I realized, like, I even though I knew I couldn't break anything, was on my disk. It wasn't, I didn't push anything to production. I was still, what if I change this function a little bit and then it breaks and I can't push it and merge it to master.
Yes.
Super paranoid.
Yeah.
That's perfectly normal, I think.
Yeah, I get that whenever I'm SSHing into different boxes, and it's like being very cautious with the commands that I run because this is still being used. So, yeah. So we've talked about your motivations, and we've talked about the resources that you've used. So let's focus now on any advice that you can give to other developers who are coming into this industry. I know that we've touched on quite a few already, but if you were having a conversation with yourself, what would you say to yourself if it was, say, 2 years ago when you were just thinking about doing this? Is there any kind of advice that you would give?
Definitely, plenty. First of all, people have to realize that the way it's being advertised right now on YouTube, like all these become a web developer in 2 months, become a web developer in 6 weeks, that's not reality.
No.
It's going to take some time.
Yeah.
You might get there in 3 months and get an entry-level job, but you will have to put in a lot of time.
Yeah.
And not everybody has the luxury to do that. I didn't, so it took me a while. But yeah, main advice would be it takes a lot of time to get, not even good, but it takes a lot of time to actually understand how a website works.
Yes.
Like what is the front end, what is the back end?
Yeah.
What are databases for? Stuff like that. Also, another thing, don't be too hard on yourself. Don't be too hard on yourself, because, if you go on Twitter and you start following all these super successful people that work for Facebook, they work for Google, and all these big companies, the worst thing you can do is like starting to compare your skill set to their skill set. Like I'm 25 years old, right? And like last week on Twitter, Max Stoiberg, I think is the pronunciation of the name, basically the person who came up with styled components. He said, it's my birthday today, I'm turning 22. And I was like, okay, I'm 3 years older than this guy. And I'm nowhere near his skill set. But that's a completely wrong way of thinking for self-taught developers, especially for those who are just getting started. Focus on your skills, focus on your skill set, and improving yourself, and don't worry what other people are doing. And also, other thing, find. If you're going to follow people on Twitter, find people who you can relate to. Like for me, when I first got into this industry, I realized that like I don't fit in very well, because like I'm not sitting behind the computer all day every day. I like to do sports, I like to work out, I like running, I like doing fun stuff as well in my free time. So when I found Ken Wheeler on Twitter, I was like, oh, I found my spirit animal. Here's the guy who's actually super successful, super smart, but he's also like a huge man child. He swears all the time, and I was like, okay, not the only one.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's,
But biggest advice, don't be hard on yourself, and be prepared that this is going to take some time.
yeah.
And that's fine. Enjoy the process, because it's not, as I said, it's not about, there's no end to this. There is nothing like, oh, I'm going to study on my own for 2 years, and then I'm going to get that job and I'll be perfectly happy. I won't have to do anything ever again. It's not about that. It's about the process, because I believe that if you want to do this for a living, you really need to enjoy it, and you need to, like spending time, coding. You need to love it to skip that birthday party. You need to love it to skip that trip that your friends are going on, but you're not, And if you're doing it just because it pays well, which is true, but if you're doing it for the sole purpose of getting paid and having money, you're not gonna be happy. So
happiness is so important.
Absolutely, it's the most important thing, because
coding can be quite a lonely process, because you are within your own thoughts a lot of the time until you get things checked and reviewed. It's not as social, I think, as other industries, other jobs. So that's one thing that I would say is be comfortable working with your own thoughts, and have sort of a way of managing yourself, I think. I mean, it's probably different here because I'm a remote dev, but I've also worked in offices where people just have headphones on.
Yeah.
And so they're isolated. Whereas if you go into another department, they're messing about, they're doing other things, and that is still true in coding, but there is this sort of the zone that people do go in, and
some people love that. Some people love that, and I like it as well, to be honest with you. I like people. I like talking to people, but I really love the fact that I can just listen to music for 8 hours a day, every day, and not be bothered. Because when I worked my first job, the fraud prevention job, I would call the customers. I would call the companies that were, it was like, oh, this is Tom from X, Y, and Z company. I just wanted to check that we're dealing with a legitimate company, and if you place the order. And I didn't like that at all. So I'm enjoying the fact that, I can just chill, not really chill. You have to work, but I can have my headphones in and listen to some nice music.
What would you say? You said earlier that, well, before this, you mentioned that you were into Linux. Is that kind of the area of development that is that your working environment now, a Linux development machine, or are you a Windows dev?
Not really. I just wanted to get rid of my. I have an older laptop at home, so I just installed Ubuntu on it, and I'm absolutely clueless. I'm trying to figure it out.
Do you think one day you would transition to the dark side, to Linux?
I don't think so. I actually am thinking about buying a Mac.
Right.
Because to tell you the truth, like MacBooks here, I don't know how is it in the UK, but here they're really expensive. I know they're expensive everywhere, but here it's really expensive. So I've never had a Mac in my life. I've never actually used a Mac in my life. So I'm thinking about buying a refurbished MacBook now.
Yeah.
Not even a new one.
So because I mention it because Angular and React and the other technologies you mentioned earlier, they have like a command line interface that you can use to do various bits and pieces and run tasks and stuff. I personally find it's easier on either Linux or a Mac rather than Windows.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah. Yeah, the commands are different. Yeah.
Yes, they are. But I think having a Unix-style machine there, it might be an easier sort of thing to do all those tasks and bits and pieces. But it is a bit of a gear change. I do appreciate that. Yeah. So we've talked about motivation and resources and other bits and pieces. Where do you see, I mean, this is a bit of a charged question, but where do you see your career progressing in terms of code? Are you thinking about being more of an architect or more of a front end sort of UI kind of person? Do you have like an area of specialism that you want to pigeonhole yourself into, or is this such an early stage at the moment that those questions are not right for this moment?
Yeah. Well, right now I try not to think about it that much.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to learn the tools that I use at work.
Yeah.
But but front end stuff is definitely something that I'm more familiar with than, for example, the back end stuff. But I also try to learn stuff that is interesting to me. You know, I don't learn new things because I should be learning them, because that's like a career, that's like the next logical step in my career path. You know, if I'm feeling like learning, you know, about CSS animations, I'll do that. You know, if I feel like learning about Node.js, I can do that at some point. You know, so I don't set like concrete goals that in terms of my growth. But JavaScript ecosystem is where I want to stay right now. Right.
Well, I think, and I'll congratulate you again on becoming a React developer. I mean, it's such a wonderful time for developers, because it is pretty much the world is your oyster in that respect. I think it would be very interesting to have you on and talk about the way you've progressed in the future, but we can sort that out later.
Sure, we can do that.
I mean, it's such a fascinating story from being self-taught. I must say that I don't know many self-taught developers, so it's very interesting to hear your perspective of it. Can I ask about your perspective of being going through college and university? Is there anything that you think you've missed from not doing that?
I don't. First of all, I actually went to university, but I dropped out after 3 semesters. I was actually studying to be an English teacher.
Right.
In combination with German, which was a terrible mistake, because, you know, I've been learning German for 8 years and I cannot have a conversation in German, to tell you the truth. But anyways, the one thing that I miss by not going through that whole computer science, degree program, is the basics of how the internet works, for example, or what, like, all the general knowledge that computer science graduates have, like in terms of computers and how the web works and what's going on behind the scenes. Because, for example, for me as a front-end developer, it's, you're making stuff happen in the browser, but you don't know, at least that's been my experience, you don't really know what's going on behind the scenes. Like when I hear about headers and cores and protocols and, I don't know. I really don't know what that means. So that's one part. But again, all of that you can learn by yourself. I think, there's actually a really nice course. I haven't watched it yet, but there's a course by Brian Holt on Front End Masters. It's, I believe, computer science degree in 5 hours or something like that. And it should give you like the general overview of the basics, like what's it actually like to go to university to study computer science. So that's something that I'm planning to do definitely in the future. in the near future.
Yeah. So it sounds like you've got ideas for what you want to learn where you are now. Yeah. That's really good. So,
I have so many ideas, but so little time. So.
So Tom, that's a fantastic story in getting yourself into the web development industry. It's only 2 weeks that you've been in, so congratulations again. And do you have any last comments, any kind of messages that you want to shout out and give to the audience?
I just wanted to, first of all, thank you for having me on. It's been a pleasure. When you first contacted me about this interview, I didn't really want to do it because in my mind I'm a complete newbie and I felt like I have nothing to share that would be beneficial. But then I thought about it and I realized like my message would be like everybody can learn this, in my opinion. It's just a matter of time. I wasn't born with this. I'm not that tech savvy. I didn't grow up wanting to be a programmer. I realized what I wanted to do when I was 22. And before that, I didn't have any real experience with programming. So my message would be just, if you want to do this, regardless of age, just try it. Just try it because you can definitely do it. It's definitely doable. And it's just about, you just have to decide how much time and energy you want to put in to this. And I think it's totally doable for pretty much everybody. I really believe that.
Yeah, that's such a good message, such a good statement. And it's very powerful. So for anyone out there who is learning development, it can be done. It can be done. You just have to put in the time. Yeah. Well, Tom, do you have any links or anything that social media stuff that you want to mention? I'll put all of this stuff in the comments and I'll do some overlays too. But have you got anything you want to just shout out?
Not especially. Just my Twitter handle. You can follow me on @Thomas Vorel 13. That's TOMASVOREL 13 on Twitter. And just keep on learning. Keep on grinding and you'll get there. And don't give up because I did that the first time I started and I lost a lot of time. So don't quit. Don't quit.
Wonderful. Well, thank you ever so much again, Tom, for coming on.
Thank you for having me on, Peter.
For the 8th millionth time, congratulations on where you are.
Thank you.
And I hope to speak to you soon. Cheers.
Thank you.
And for everyone else, happy coding, and I'll speak to you again later. Cheers. Bye.